The following podcast contains coarse language and adult themes. This week on the show, Thwip Thwip, post Astor Theatre Spider-thon, we're shooting webs and getting sticky, talking the Sam Raimi OG web-crawling trilogy in the first of 4 Legacy of the Spider-Man episodes. My name's Reegs.
And I'm Eddie.
And this is the Film Addicts Podcast. Hey folks, welcome back to the Film Addicts Podcast. We're so happy to have you here. I'm on the line with Addy. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, sir. It's good to be back after 2 weeks.
It is. We had a bit of a break there, mostly because I was flat chat with production work. So flat chat, in fact, ladies and gentlemen, that I had a camera incident. My camera fell from its tripod. My brand new C300 Mark III fell from its tripod when it was unhooked and somebody moved. And dropped to the ground and is currently being repaired in Sydney. So fuck is what I have to say to that. But apart from that, the other thing that happened was the Astor Theatre in Melbourne's Spider-thon. Now I'm going to talk about it for a second because it was joyful and wonderful, and I'll never forget it. It was, I mean, you go to the Astor Theatre, it's a legacy theatre. They play mostly old movies, and there's a big the audience brings a lot to the shows, especially if you do films that have cult following. Spider-Man has its own cult following, I guess, but the movies in general, particularly the Tobey ones, I found. But the crowd, just everyone was there for the same reason. People were cheering like as soon as it started. They had a Spider-Man in the room as well, and he was doing flips and shit. He was doing flips. And they had the guy who curates all the calendar there come out and talk about it and how crazy it is, 19 and a half hours or something. Thanks for coming, blah blah blah. So I'm getting ready, and the first movie starts, and all of a sudden, Tobey Maguire's name comes up, and everybody screams, and J.K. Simmons comes on screen, and everyone goes wow, and everyone's doing the lines and doing the movie, doing all the different. Knowing all the different segments and what's coming next and oohs and ahs. And it was like being at a sports event. And I don't typically go to sports events, but it had that kind of energy. And as we got into the more ludicrous, like say, for instance, the third Spider-Man film with Tobey Maguire, that's so stupid and so cartoonish, it took on this new dimension because people were just loving how crazy it is and how unbelievable that film ended up being what it was. Like when Toby dances down the street, that the famous scene now, people got up out of their seats and were doing the dances and stuff. It was just, and don't get me started. I think I posted, if you follow the Stitch Up with Reegs on Instagram, and I sent it to Addy as well. I filmed for Addy the intro of Amazing Spider-Man 2, where Peter's sort of falling from the sky. Some of the best Spider-Man you'll ever see. But we'll get into that next week when we talk about the Andrew Garfields. But people lost their fucking minds. There were girls in the back, what I could assume was girls, very high-pitched voices going, Andrew, wow! It was baller. And I did have a little nap during Far From Home, because that's what happens. And then I woke up and finished up with the... Into the Spider-Verse was before that, which was awesome. That was really fun to see that with that crowd because that's got a huge cult following now as well. Everyone's screaming miles, miles, miles at the end of it. And it was just awesome. It was so great. And I come out and I was really tired, but it was so worth my time. So thank you to the Astor Theatre. Thank you to the crowd. And thank you for coming to hear me talk about it right now on the podcast.
That was cool, man. Thank you.
It was awesome. It was so, so cool. But, what we're going to do today is talk about the Spider-Man trilogy, the OG from, as I said in the roundup, from the 2000s. So that's the Spider-Man, the original, 2002. Spider-Man 2 was 2004. And if I'm not mistaken, Spider-Man 3 was about 2006, 2007. So we're going to just...
2007.
It was 2007? Yeah. So we're just going to talk about them just loosely and talk about kind of the legacy that they have within the Spider-Mans. And I also want to talk about some interesting history of what happened, before this film came to be what we now know it is and what it could have been in the multiverse. There's a very, very different version of this film out there. So, but before we do that, Addy, what's been up with you, mate?
Oh, nothing. I've been preparing for this for the past week.
Have you watched what did you watch? Have you watched just the first 3 or?
No, So I've learned the Amazing Spider-Man films. Like I know literally everything.
Yeah.
But I don't really go back to watch the Tobey films. Not that much.
Mm-hmm.
I used to when I was small because now people don't have TVs where they have channels in them. But when I was small, it used to be on because it was such a big deal, especially Spider-Man 2 used to be on all the time. So it was like a rule for me that if it's on and I catch it, I have to finish it all the way through.
That's a good rule to have. Yeah.
Yeah. I went back and I don't know. We get into what I feel, but it's interesting to go back.
Yeah, through the prism of nostalgia, I feel like those films are better the way I remembered them. Particularly the second one. The second one to me was I watched that 3 times in a row once on a plane from Melbourne to Scotland in 2005 or something. And it was just on. And I was just I will stuff it. I'm here for 10 hours anyway. So I just watched it 3. And it's particularly the set pieces and the train chase, and Alfred Molina's awesome in it and stuff. But some of I struggle with some of it performance-wise. I struggle with some of its cartoonishness, and I struggle with the acting, particularly from Tobey, because he is so gosh Willikers kind of thing. I like my Andrew Garfield broody kind of Spider-Man, but maybe that's just me. But anyway, before we get into those 3 films, the Tobey films that we're going to have a little chat about, shall we do a quick nerd news, because there's some interesting shit that's happened.
Yeah, let's do a snippet of nerd news.
Let's do a small, we'll call it a sliver or a slicky, just a segment like an orange. Normally you get an entire nerd news orange. Today, it's just a sliver. You've finished a game of sport and you're just having that and a Gatorade. What am I talking about? Here's the news then. So here we are with a very brief Film Addicts Podcast nerd news. Addy, you had one that you wanted to talk about straight up. Do you want to let the folks know what that might be?
Yeah, it's about casting in Dune 2, and I can't pronounce the name, so please help me out.
It's I don't know. She's the person from
No Time to Die.
No Time to Die. Here we go. Let me find out. Now, it wasn't Ana de Armas. Leah Seydoux. I don't know. Diox. I think that X is probably pronounced as a Z. But her name's Leah anyway, and she was she played Madeline in No Way Home. No Way Home. Spider-Man on the Brain. No Time to Die. So there you go. That's her name.
Yeah, thank you so much. And she's been cast in Dune Part 2.
I fucking didn't help at all. If anything, I made it worse. So yeah, she's in Dune number 2.
As Lady Margot.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't recall that character.
Yeah, we probably don't know the character because we haven't read the books.
Yeah, but I've seen the David Lynch picture, so I assume that she's in that in some capacity. But maybe I'm just getting confused. Well, that's cool.
I mean, I think they're going the route of giving Denis Villeneuve his trilogy, so he might be pulling characters from books 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Because the part 1 was half of book 1.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm just interested because there's so much going on. I love how we got a cast of Dune Part 1 and then most of them just died. All the A-listers.
Yeah.
And then we're getting another cast just like that.
Mm. Yeah,
so I'm kind of scared but also excited.
You're scared and excited. Sorry. That's the best place to be for movies, I find. Well, that's super cool. That movie's kicking off. It's starting to shoot. I think it's at the end of next month or middle of this month. Soon, anyway.
Middle of next month. Yeah.
Right on. Okay, so the next piece of news that I thought was quite interesting was something that just popped up on my feed today. Legendary film composer John Williams is looking at retiring after Indiana Jones 5. Currently untitled, just Indiana Jones 5. And you know what? He's fucking earned it.
He has.
Yeah.
To be completely honest, I think it was your story that I saw it on.
Yeah.
Or somebody else's story. And I have to say, and you can kill me for it, but I have to say, I did not know he was alive.
Well, I must admit, when I saw the picture, I didn't sort of see the caption first. I just saw the picture. I'm like, oh fuck, he's dead. He must be dead. Because I don't know if you know this, he is 1104 years old. He is 700 years old if he's a day. John Williams, and still working. He just did the theme for Obi-Wan.
Isn't that the one they used from the prequels?
No, that was the thing. He said, when they announced that they were going to do this series, that he didn't get the opportunity to write Obi-Wan a theme in episode 1 or 2 or 3 because they're not really centered on him. It's about Anakin more than anything. And if you're looking at the first one, the Phantom Menace, it is Anakin as that little boy, but also Qui-Gon. That's more his story than it is Obi-Wan's. So it gave him the opportunity to write this really cool theme, which is kind of the thread that you hear throughout that show. So God bless him. I hope he works out how to do the transition into retirement really, really well and gets to, I don't know, write a symphony of his own or something like that, like Mr. Holland's opus. Good on him. Now, this is one that you mentioned. The Kevin Feige's.
Yeah.
He has come out and said fans will learn more about Marvel's next big saga, so, like the Infinity Stone saga kind of thing, in the coming months. Something's going to happen that will make it obvious to people. And I assume it's either going to be the end of Miss Marvel or Thor, the Love and Thunder.
It's probably going to be end of Miss Marvel because Thor comes out in a week or 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean
the SNL sketch that's titled Thor: Love and Thunder comes out in 2 weeks.
Okay, yeah. They had another trailer drop as well, and it's just as quirky and just as kooky. We've talked about that. It's going to be what it's going to be, and whatever. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I like we've talked about before. It's either going to be something to do with fighting Skrulls or Kree, or it's got to be cosmic in some nature. And then you've got to think about what Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness set up, which is currently streaming on Disney Plus now. Dropped yesterday, I think. I'm interested to see how all these threads are going to get tied together.
At least have an idea of where it's leading to. Not necessarily seeing how it's going to bleed in, just knowing that something out there is going to make sense. Yeah,
that it's got some cohesion in a way that's hard when there's so much going on in so many different places. You've got the Disney Plus, you've got the movies that are coming out, and then you've got everything that was delayed. Like I found out today, I was listening to a podcast called Script Apart, and they were talking to the writer of Multiverse of Madness, and apparently the host said this, the writer didn't confirm, but the idea was that because Multiverse of Madness was delayed from COVID, it got released after No Way Home. Apparently it should have been before, and that America Chavez was going to be introduced in No Way Home, as opposed to Ned opening portals. It was going to be her. And they had to kind of flip the script because everything got messed up because of the timeline. So I guess we'll just sort of find out how they've managed to wrangle all of that while dealing with the pandemic. But, in Kevin we trust.
That's what I said. I sent you that and I said in Kevin we trust.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he knows what he's doing. And finally...
That's interesting, though. Just going back, that's interesting because if we had America Chavez in No Way Home, then we might not have had Doctor Strange, which would have made it a bit more just kid-centric. But would it be interesting to see just that combination of Sochi Gomez and Tom Holland?
I think
Would be very interesting.
they probably would have had Strange in some capacity, even just at the beginning of the first act, to set the spell in motion, and then had her come on and do that last little bit or whatever. Because you got to remember, Doctor Strange is missing for a huge portion of that film. He gets trapped above the Grand Canyon, stuck in that, geometry square thing. So yeah, you're probably right. He's probably been plopped in where America Chavez would have been taken up some space. And finally, the final nerd news. This one's just for me, really. Australian director Leigh Whannell, who's responsible for the creation of the Saw franchise. He also directed a fucking baller film the year before last, which was a retelling of The Invisible Man, with Elizabeth Moss. Really wonderful film, and another great film called Upgrade as well. If you get a chance to see that, it's really cool. He's my understanding, and I spoke to the cinematographer of Invisible Man, and a film that got made here in Melbourne that they're shooting a sequel at the moment called The Dry. The cinematographer that is on Instagram, and I messaged him to say that The Dry was probably one of the most beautiful films I'd ever seen shot. It was an Eric Bana Australian set murder mystery, and he was saying thanks, and I'm like, hey, are you working with Lee again on Wolfman, which is what he was going to be doing with Blumhouse, and Ryan Gosling was cast and stuff. And he said, yeah, we're working on the script at the moment. That was like a year ago at least, or a little bit more, and now it seems that perhaps that'll be on the back burner because Leigh Whannell is in talks to write and direct Universal's The Green Hornet and Kato film, which is, characters that spun out of they're pop culture characters. The Green Hornet is actually the great-great-grandson of the Lone Ranger, but made popular in the 60s by being in the Batman and Robin Adam West, Burt Ward series, and Bruce Lee played Kato. But it looks like they're trying to reboot that, and I'm fucking here for it. If it's Leigh Whannell, I'm sold. Outstanding. So that's the nerd news for the day. Shall we get into the Spider-Man?
Let's swing in. Let's swing into New York City now.
Let's swing in. We're going through the caverns of buildings to be sticking on walls and, eating cookies and being a fucking nuisance, as Tobey Maguire is in a lot of that, and beating up our best mates. So what I would like to hear first is, because, my previous with these films is, the first one came out in 2002. I was a year into film school. And, I was a huge Spider-Man fan, huge comic book fan, like such a massive nerd. Still hot though. Fucking, just hot. Being hot Regs back in 2002.
You're still hot, man. What the fuck? You're still hot.
I do. I've got, much sort of older man kind of hot vibes going on now. Got the salt and pepper coming in. I could play Mr. Fantastic.
Yes. Oh, yes, dude.
Right, Kevin? I know you're listening, mate. Give me a ring. I mean, John Krasinski's great and everything, but he's tall. So, anyway, regardless of how hot I was in 2002. So ludicrous. I love it. It was fucking huge. Like this movie, the first movie that came out, it was batshit. Like it was the biggest thing to happen since 89 Batman film. It was the biggest movie ever. It opened at $100 million opening weekend, which no film had ever done before. Went on to become the highest grossing film of all time until it was bumped off by, I think it was the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie a few years later. But everyone had Spider-Man fever. And I spoke to the manager at the Astor the other night, and she was there. She brought her son, and they were watching. The first film was an original 35mm print, so it was amazing to see it in that proper 2:3:5 ratio, and just outstanding. And she was saying she grew up with these films because she was young when they came out, and now her son gets to see it the way that she saw it, and blah blah blah. So it's got a real, like I said before, real nostalgia point for people who are my age. But for someone like yourself, who you said before, your Spider-Man movies are the Garfield pictures, which is, great. And when we get into that, I'll explain why I agree with you next week. But what is your feeling about these original ones? I'm really, really interested to hear what your take is.
So again, I've read like a few Spider-Man comics now, but it's something like I would describe Spider-Man, because this is Legacy of Spider-Man. This is part 1.
Of 4.
And of 4. Oh, we're gonna have a good time. But
wait,
yeah.
I'm so excited.
I would describe it as like most people describe Star Wars, is that, or at least like my generation when they describe Star Wars, that they were born into a world where Star Wars already existed. So it's a mythology that, or like, it's a thing that already existed, had a fan base. I wasn't born in 2002.
And this is the part of the podcast where I tell Addy to go fuck himself.
That's exactly why I brought it up, because I wanted to hear it.
Am I really... Hang on a second. It's 2002. So I was 20 when you were born. That's whack. That's whack.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So this really is an Obi-Wan and Anakin kind of...
Does that mean you're going to turn evil and I'm going to cut you?
No!
Because I'm not on board for that. I don't want to go to Mustafar. It looks hot as shit. I don't like the heat. I'm Celtic. I like the cool air. My natural colour is pale blue. And I don't want to then have a fight with you and then you rake me across coals or whatever happened in Obi-Wan.
Yeah, we'll have an episode on that. But anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, sorry, keep going about the Spider-Mans.
Yeah. So... I know I've said that I fell in love with superheroes because of the X-Men, and that will always stay the case. But I think I've always been a fan of Spider-Man. It's like, it's hard to describe, but it's so true. Because like even if you're like 80 years old, you sit in a theater, you just sit and just watch Spider-Man swinging. It's a 6-year-old in you that's like, holy shit, maybe I can do that.
Don't.
So, yeah, I mean, if you're 80 years old and you think that, you probably should go check with your doctor first.
Yeah.
But
otherwise you get a sore back like the Tobey Maguire does in No Way Home.
Yeah, it is. But
yeah, there is a childlike glee that you get from seeing Spider-Man, particularly, as when we saw this. I mean, you would have seen the Andrew ones first, but when you saw this, it's the first time you saw Spider-Man do what you've always known he was able to do in real life and see it right there in front of you. And some of the CG doesn't really hold up in these films, obviously, because they're 20 years old. But yeah, there is something that taps into a very particular part of everybody's childhood where you can't deny it. That's why it makes $100 million this opening weekend, because everyone's like, holy shit, Spider-Man.
Yeah. I mean, like, people have gone on and on and on about how masterfully directed and written the second one is. I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
I find the first one very well written and very well directed. Like the first one feels like a kid took up a camera and is just filming his friends who happens to be a Spider-Man. Like it feels that way. I don't know, maybe because now, especially now that we know so many heroes now.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's hard to go back to a point where, or just to go back and think that this was made when nothing like this ever existed. It was the first of its kind. So,
well, I mean, yeah, yes and no. X-Men was before this. X-Men was 2000. So much so that Hugh Jackman was flown to New York during the filming of the first Spider-Man picture to do a cameo as Wolverine, but they couldn't get the costume to him. So and they ran out of time, so they didn't end up shooting it. Isn't that crazy?
That's so what?
Yeah,
that is crazy.
Because one of the things I must, and sorry to cut you off, but I'll just say, well, it's because it was one of the points I was going to make, but it's in my head. The idea of a solo superhero adventure, watching him this time and all the way through until you get to the No Way Homes of it and everything like that. But the Tobey films and the Andrew films are standalone, even though the Andrew Garfield pictures were trying to set up a Sinister Six kind of thing, and there's a lot of leeway. There's no other heroes around. You know, it's not like and Tobey Maguire's the 3 pictures that Sam Raimi directed are in a silo, like they are unto themselves. I think he mentions the Thing. He's like, "Hey, I'm not the Thing" or whatever, which is a Fantastic Four reference. But then I reheard it at the Astor, and I think he says, "Unlock the Thing" is what I think he says. But anyway, regardless of that, talking about Fantastic Fours or not, it was so fucking refreshing to see a solo adventure in 3 parts or whatever it is, you know, or 2 parts. It was the Andrew one, to not have it bogged down with, because, you know, the first Tom Holland movie is so bogged down with MCU stuff. Like, if you hadn't seen Civil War, it's hard to pick up what's going on at the beginning of that film. And why is Iron Man his mentor? And a lot of different stuff goes on. But with these Tobey ones, especially the first 2, it's just like, okay, I'm here for Spider-Man, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. I think you can see Sony trying to make something out of the first Spider-Man film when you watch Spider-Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that's what I felt. But it's crazy, you know, because I have known those films all my life, but I've never actually sat down and watched it with my brother, who's younger than me. He's 5 years younger, so his Spider-Man would be Tom Holland's Spider-Man.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, there's the one, the other, or the other at this point generationally. Like,
yeah.
So our you know, if I was to have kids, they would be the Tom Holland generation, you know.
And like all Spider-Man fans, we loved No Way Home. But I was watching Spider-Man 2 the other day, and it's the first interaction between Dr. Otto Octavius and Peter Parker, and Peter Parker says, trying to do better. And I knew that the reference was there in No Way Home, but my brother didn't. And he pointed it out. He's like, oh, that's what he says in that movie. I was like, that's like, irrespective of everyone, irrespective of what people feel about those films, there is that connection with this character that's existed, and it's just pure love. Like, when someone points that out, it's not that, oh shit, I have to do this and that to figure that out. It's pure feeling.
Yep. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, no, I totally get it. And I think the callbacks and stuff they do in No Way Home is a good way to have everybody kind of catch up and go, okay, well, this is where we are now. And then it's funny because, and we'll talk about that movie in like 4 weeks when we get round to the MCU Spider-Man films, but just to make a point about it now real quick, Toby, Andrew, and Tom all in that film together, and bringing the villains in from the different places. What it did was not only get everybody, like, service everybody really well and tell everybody everything you think about your Spider-Man is valid. If your favorite's Toby, it was at the Astor the other night. Some people was Toby, some people were Andrew, some people were Tom, some people were, you know, Miles. You find your likes, your favorites in there because of not only where you are generationally, but where you get to with that film, No Way Home. And at the end of it, you go, oh, that's right. Actually, I do really like those ones. That's the one that's for me. That's the story that spoke the loudest. You know, I love the Toby films. They've aged a little bit too much for me. They date really badly. But you know, and then watching the 2 Garfield films, because I didn't see the first Garfield film in cinemas for a bunch of different reasons, but it was stupid of me. I saw the second one with Emily because she loves those movies. And to see them both back to back, I'm like, oh, hang on, this is the story that gets me, because it's a lot more serious. There's a lot more stakes, in my opinion, as well. It's not all kind of gee gosh willikers. The acting's much better, and also the Spider-Manning, the CG Spider-Manning rivals any other that's been done. You know, Spider-Verse doesn't count because it's animated, but even the current Tom Holland pictures, you know, that, like you said, the opening 2-minute shot of Amazing Spider-Man 2, where he drops down and you see the rippling of the costume and stuff, unmatched, you know, and as good as things like, you know, the train sequence in particular in Spider-Man 2, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2, or the final swinging through the caverns of Manhattan shot, which still holds up. I still got goosebumps. That score rises, the Danny Elfman score, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I remember watching this over and over and over again when I got it on DVD, because it was, Spider-Man's my favorite character, really, like favorite superhero. Always has been. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, the first thing I ever learned how to read was a Spider-Man comic. I still have it. It's like Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man 336, and he gets attacked by Dr. Octopus. That character was always spoken to me for whatever reason. So, seeing the Tobey movies, that happened was a really big deal. And then as I matured and became a filmmaker as well, because I was still at film school then, thinking, oh, that's so cool and blah, blah, blah. And then going on and going, oh, hang on, there's some better executed things down the line here. As great a director as Sam Raimi is, obviously. And I remember my lecturer at film school, a woman named Libby, she ran the course that I did. We were talking about the film coming out, and she goes, it's fucking bullshit. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, why are his web shooters organic? Why do they come out of his wrists? And they made a good joke about it in No Way Home. But I was like, oh, I don't know, just conserving the story. Fact is, in the original script and in some of the original scenes, it was mechanical. And there's even some scenes in the original Spider-Man film where if you look at Tobey's wrists, you can see where they've had to digitally remove the bands. It's like blurred a little bit. I'm dead serious. And so I went to organic, and she goes, yeah, but that takes away, as a storyteller, it takes away one of the threats, because if he never runs out, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a holdover from the James Cameron scriptment that he wrote, where it was that, and Spider-Man had to replenish himself the way that the Flash does when the Flash has to eat heaps because he burns calories. Spider-Man has to replenish proteins because he's fucking whipping it at everybody's face, and other stuff. But so it was interesting to sort of see what they changed and how you can kind of. Some things you can forgive, like that kind of thing, but the portrayal of Peter is something I have a particular problem with in Tobey Maguire.
Well, I do too, but just going back to the web shooter point, I get your point, and that Spider-Man has always had web shooters, right?
They've always been something that he built. There was a period of time in the comics when they did go to organic web shooters, around about the time these films came out, but then switched back to the other ones. And I like the idea of the him building them, like in Amazing Spider-Man. I think that's cool.
I think it works just for the Raimi films. There's no like direct connection to like Oscorp. Like Harry is his best friend, sort of. Like he's not really his best friend. He's an asshole.
They're kind of in competition with each other. Like on set as well. Apparently, James Franco, who's like legendarily a fucking monster and an asshole, so we won't talk about him much, but he's not a very good actor, and he's not very good in these films, particularly the third one where he's fucking, he's supposed to have amnesia. He's playing it like Regarding fucking Henry. People who've seen Regarding Henry will understand what I mean by that. He, like on set during making the first film, he was constantly making fun of Tobey Maguire apparently looking like a frog. I just did air quotes because I don't think that's true. Tobey Maguire's a good looking enough dude, and Tobey was like really pissed off, and it actually created quite a bit of derision between them on set, which I guess works in the end for them because they've got to be antagonistic towards each other at some point.
Yeah, sure, but also like having Willem Dafoe in a Spider-Man film.
Oh,
like how do you pull that?
Big Willie style. Willem Dafoe is he's the shit in those movies. In the first movie, he is fucking outstanding. I can't say enough about Willem. I love him.
Like I was watching the first one, and while watching, I was like, oh shit, I don't think that in this film I like Spider-Man. Like they were cutting from Willem doing his like the mirror scene to Peter like walking down the street or something. I don't remember, but I was like, fuck that! I just want to see him.
Yeah, he's so good.
He's amazing. Like he does. It's like such a weird thing that they had like they had the whole goblin suit with the mask and shit. And like it took 20 years for them to figure out they're willing to fucking pull off a goblin without the goblin shit.
Very true. The first mask, there's a test screening thing of the first mask that was like, it was rubber with some animatronic inside. But yeah, they went with the more sort of Power Rangey kind of slick design for whatever reason. I'm not really sure why. But I'll tell you this much. So William Dafoe gets the role of Green Goblin, right? The other people in contention were Nicolas Cage, John Malkovich, who would be touted as possibly playing the Vulture if Toby and Sam Raimi went on to do Spider-Man 4, which was, they spent $100 million on Spider-Man 4 that never got made. They had scripts done, they had costumes, they had all this stuff done. Also, Bill Paxton, R.I.P., Mel Gibson, John Travolta, Brad Dourif, and Robert De Niro were all sort of asked to do it. Billy Crudup, who plays the Flash's dad in Justice League and also played Dr. Manhattan in the Zack Snyder Dr. Manhattan film, he was in it, but he dropped out because the production decided that he was a little bit too young to actually play Norman Osborn. And then De Niro, Mel Gibson, and Travolta all turned down the role themselves. Even De Niro was considered at one point for Dr. Otto Octavius, because in the original screenplay for the first film there were two villains. It was going to be Otto and Norman Osborn.
Oh, that would have been fun.
How about them apples? Yeah, right.
But we kind of got that film anyway. 20 years on.
A lot of it is, well, I mean, we can get into it. Do you mind if I just talk a little bit of the history about the first film?
Sure, go on. And go on with the James Cameron stuff, because I have something I want to say there.
Okay, all right, cool. Well, yeah, so, I was interested to hear sort of where you came from as a fan of Spider-Man and where these kind of sit for you, but I think it is a little bit before your time, and they do date a lot. So, right, so the story goes, hang on one second. I'm just going to get the information that I have aside me here. So the story goes that at one point, Cannon, the production house who made really B-grade action movies in the 80s and stuff with Chuck Norris and shit, they owned the rights in the 80s. And they, tried to get it made for, a really small amount of money, unsuccessfully. It was 1985, and Goldwyn and Globus, the heads of Cannon Films, bought the rights to make it. But they thought of it as more of like a monster movie as opposed to like a superhero movie, and it ended up being more of like a kind of a horror picture, which is a bit crazy. In fact, Toby Hooper, who directed Poltergeist and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was considered to direct, and the possible casting of Tom Cruise as Peter Parker, Bob Hoskins as Dr. Ock, Stan Lee as J. Jonah Jameson, and either Lauren Bacall or fucking Katharine Hepburn as Aunt May. This project was scrapped after the box office failure of Cannon's Superman 4: A Quest for Peace in 1987. So after that happened, James Cameron gets the call, and he'd made Titanic at that point, and he was in production on True Lies, what's the film? Just Arnold Schwarzenegger film, which is really good and still hasn't got a DVD release. But so he gets hired to write this treatment, and there's a whole bunch of legalese and shit that I won't go into about who owned the rights and blah blah blah, and it ended up at Sony, but a lot of backwards and forthing. But James Cameron's script, right? You can read it. It's a scriptment, so like half script, half treatment. It's got a lot of dialogue in there. There's actual scenes written out, but then there's also just like breakdowns of action and things like that. It's like a 47-page script. You can find it. I found it. It's on the internet. We'll put a link in the description on YouTube, and you can look for it yourself. It's fucking crazy. But the casting for that, being the situation that we're in at that particular period of time, Leo DiCaprio was being looked at for Spider-Man. An actress named Nikki Cox, who I believe was on either Saved by the Bell or one of those teen programs in the 90s. She's like beautiful redhead. She was going to be Jane. Kevin Spacey as Norman Osborn, Green Goblin. Michael Douglas as J. Jonah Jameson. Again, Katharine Hepburn as May Parker. Michael Biehn as Sandman. Michael Biehn being the Reese from the Terminator picture. And Lance Hendrickson, who was in a bunch of shit. He was in the Aliens picture and whatnot. He was going to be Electro, and Arnold Schwarzenegger again as Otto Octavius. And so in this script, it's like it kind of starts and he's already Spider-Man. There's no origin story. It would have happened within the opening credits, and he's just like suspended on a building upside down, and it just starts with his voiceover, and it's him being kind of a dick. Actually, he's a bit of an asshole towards people and thinking he's a bit better than everybody. It also included, it's laden with profanity, not the script that I read, but the original sort of draft that I think they did. And also it had, Addy, a sexy scene in which Spider-Man and Mary Jane fuck on the Brooklyn Bridge. Where's that movie? That's a porn parody if I've ever heard it, you know?
Yeah. That's the one that got the creators of The Boys inspired. That's the script.
Oh yeah. I haven't seen the new episode yet, so I'm assuming it's pretty damn sexy.
Yeah.
It's so that was, the James Cameron of it all. That got, turned around when the rights went to Sony. And, they also considered David Fincher. His version would have been, again, told the origin story in the opening credits, and would have been based on the night that Gwen Stacy died, which is a run from the comics. And Christopher Columbus was also offered the directing chair, but he opted to make the first Harry Potter picture instead. So
good on him.
Yeah, and also Leo passed on it. There was a whole bunch of stuff that kind of happened that didn't let that happen. But then along came a director, Sam Raimi, coming out of independent horror pictures, had made Darkman with Liam Neeson, which was sort of a superhero movie. He also lobbied hard to be the director of Batman, the 1989 version that Tim Burton ended up directing. And, they're like, okay, we're going to give this guy a shot. And he's even said, lifelong Spider-Man fan, had a mural painted on his bedroom wall of Spider-Man, and he just got it. Like, he just got the comic book tone. He had the sense of humor for it. He understood visually how to translate Spider-Man's movements from static imagery in the comics, these amazing poses that, the human body can never get into, just purely because our joints don't go that way, and how to turn that into fluid movement. The first real big fight scene in that first picture, where he's at the Unity Day festival where Macy Gray's playing. Remember Macy Gray? Wonder what happened to her. Just out there being a Spider-Man villain, apparently. That's like the blending of practical stunt work and CG was still paramount. I think there's so much less of that now. John Dykstra, the special effects supervisor, was very keen on keeping that kind of going from one to the other seamlessly between shots. So you've got to give it up for its technical prowess, if nothing else. Although it has dated, I will admit.
I wouldn't say it's dated. I wouldn't say that. Like, I've recently seen them, and the CG holds up pretty well.
Yeah. On the big screen, not as much. There's some stuff that's kind of just a little bit flat looking or a little bit robotic looking.
Like the suit?
Yeah, the suit in particular, because it's got the webbing, that's not actually part of the suit. It's kind of raised. It looks like,
It's like there's the suit and then there's the cage above the suit.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, actually. Yeah, and that's cool and whatnot. But some of the stuff, it just looks a little bit flat. But and it happens as you go further along in the movies. Like the third film is, I must say, I've got a better appreciation for that film now because of seeing it with that audience and because it is so ludicrous. Like I said, people dancing in the stalls and doing lines and just laughing at how fucking insane it is, especially when he's emo Spider-Man and he's like, the idea of that is he becomes almost a drug addict, right? That's not light. At one point, he slaps Mary Jane across the face. Like, he doesn't mean to. He's getting into a fight with those guys in the nightclub that Mary Jane works at, and she tries to stop him, and he hits her. That's pretty fucking dark shit. And to make it him like this, I'm a baby man who likes eating cookies and drinking milk. No, you're a guy who goes out there and fucks and does spider cocaine and, uses his powers for ill, that kind of thing. But some of the CG, like getting back to that point, is you struggle in that. Even the Venom stuff, especially now that we've seen a Venom picture, which isn't much better, to be honest, but you can kind of see what they were trying to go for. And Topher Grace, are you killing me? That guy's about as threatening as a fucking wet fart. It's just like, what? Yeah, I don't know about him. But I do appreciate it more now, that film. The one that got me the most, though, during the Spider-Thon, and I haven't seen it in years. I rewatched the OG one with Emily a few months ago, because she hadn't seen it, because she doesn't like Tobey Maguire. And that's fine. I don't particularly like Tobey Maguire either. I don't think he's a very good actor. I think he does well enough in this role, and he's also really good in No Way Home. I think he's obviously a better actor now than he was then. But I also know he's kind of a piece of shit in real life. So I've seen Molly's Game, like I know what's up. And the Pussy Posse, his group of the young dudes he used to hang out with, which was like him and Kevin Dillon and was it Kevin Dillon? One of the guys from Entourage, Leo, David Blaine. Like they had this kind of crew that was called Pussy Posse, and they would just go out and cause havoc and just be rich, rude, young white guys. So I struggle with that,
So they were the real life inspiration for the Entourage? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, the real life inspiration for Entourage is Mark Wahlberg and his entourage of dudes. There was a real turtle and everything. I don't mean a real turtle as in like the animal, the real turtle. If you know Entourage.
Yeah.
It'd be funny if it was okay, wait a second. Pitch. If it was a TV show that was about Mark Wahlberg having adventures with an actual turtle, 50% better show.
Yeah.
Mark and the Tortoise, I would watch. But so I struggle to divorce myself from, it's the same way I can't watch Will Smith movies anymore. Like I can't separate the person from the art. Sometimes you can't do that because they are in conflict with everything that you hold like your own values around, like not being a fucking cocaine addled piece of shit or slapping people on television, like it just doesn't work for me. But looking at them in this light and having watched them, particularly the second one, like structurally is really, really great. Like it's got a great act structure and the beats of action are just where you want them to be. And there's a lot of kind of, Otto Octavius is the most sympathetic villain because he's kind of made a monster by his own, trying to be better. He's kind of makes himself a monster and then is kind of warped by like the tentacles in that movie have a life of their own. Like it's just particularly the hospital scene where they attack everybody. And they talk to him and it's really cool and creepy and very much more in the horror vein. Or at least in the creepy horror vein, the way that Sam Raimi does so well. So there is a lot going on, but the acting in these pictures and the dialogue in particular, especially the second one, which was written by the guys who created Smallville, is so like it's like they read a comic book and then synthesized like up 100% and made it sound so hokey and so difficult to hear. Like some of it pangs really hard, and especially Mary Jane and Peter interacting, they're like babies, they're like children talking to each other. There's a lot of like a lot of that kind of guff going on, and it bugged me. Like I want my relationships to ring true, if nothing else. I can't hear you.
Shit.
Oh, no, I can now. You said shit. Addy done a swore. Everyone, Addy done a swore. People are going to cancel the podcast subscription. Do people subscribe to us? I don't know. Do you?
No, you just have to listen. Yeah. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, that's
did I disappear for a second there?
Yeah, no, you went to say something and then it was just like, I missed it.
Oh, because you completely disappeared for me.
Did I? I'm here. It is dark here though. But
No,
yeah,
like
just talking
Zoom
about-
shutdown, maybe. I don't know.
No, we're all right. We're fine. I think anyway. Yeah, it should be cool. But yeah, I was talking about the sort of the acting in general. William Dafoe's killing it, like, because he knows what he's doing. In fact, I don't know how he didn't put on weight during this picture for all the fucking scenery that he's eating. It's just outrageous how he is. And Alfred Molina is the same in the second one. The third one's kind of whatever because the villains don't do anything. But, you know, those first two, the villains are why you're there. It's kind of like the original Batman movies.
Yeah, I mean, like, just the mirror scene. I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. Like, I will die for Lord of the Rings.
Oh, you know,
And the mirrors.
the Astor's doing a run through of like
Yeah,
amazing.
I saw
Go on.
that. I saw that. I was like, I'm so jealous now.
Pretty great. If there's ever a reason to come to Melbourne, shit.
Yeah. Well, like the mirror scene, it's so like Smeagol talking to Gollum in the second Lord of the Rings film,
It's absolutely
and it's absolutely that, right? And I was watching it, I was like, holy shit! He even took the fucking expressions that Gollum makes while talking to him, like. And you watch the two of those scenes, and you're like, shit. But Willem Dafoe is so good in that film. Like, I don't care about Peter as much as I do about just him trying to be like I think it's right after he's gone from the Thanksgiving dinner when he figures out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And he goes to his house, and then Harry comes to check on him, and he hugs Harry, and it's Norman Osborn trying to be trying to get better and trying to like get away from this goblin that's still inside of him.
Mm.
It's so good because you don't see it, but you feel it.
Yeah.
It's mind blowing that they have him in a Power Ranger suit, man.
And covering his face, like of all the people you don't
Yeah.
want to cover the. I mean, Spider-Man, you totally get it. I mean, he kind of speaks for everyone. You know, he's the hero that could be anybody. You know, it's like in the little middle section where it's like, you know, it might be a woman kind of thing. Where you know, Xena's in there going, "Guy with 8 legs sounds kind of hot." Like, whatever you're into, lady. Like, kink shame nobody. But yeah, having your main villain as expressive as Willem Dafoe is, you know, and there's that meme that's gone round about how when he discovers that he's being kicked out of Oscorp, that he goes through, you know, this 9 stages of dealing with the situation, whatever it is. But that scene where he's in front of the mirror, and he's switching between the two. Like at first, it starts off as him like hearing the voice, then he turns around, looks in the mirror, and he's talking to himself, and then they're cutting back and forth at first, and then they don't do a cut. And he's in the pose, he's got the weird shoulder action going on, kind of like a some sort of big cat, you know, a predator. Not the predator from the movie Predator, but like a lion, how the lion's kind of shoulders slink. And he's like standing there and got weird posture. And then he throws the glass and stands up straight. And he's back to being, you know, the meek Norman Osborn again, talking to this insane version of himself. And then back again. And it just cuts back and forth between 2 headshots, one in the mirror, one not. Once that scene finished, there was a massive round of applause. Because it really is a remarkable performance in what is such a goofy movie. And it gave him the opportunity to do some real villain shit. Whereas being in latex is one thing, but being literally covered from head to toe in green, what I can only describe as mech suit, I guess. Like that's a lot of hard work. Alfred Molina just had to have, you know, CG arms attached to him. So, but I think
well, there weren't CG, were there?
A lot
At
of the
least
time they were
in
practical.
Spider-Man 2.
I mean, there's, you know, some of them were CG, but there's a lot of practical work going on there too. Particularly when they're like in the frame, like in a close up with Alfred Molina, and they've sort of come in from either side, like raptors, you know. But yeah, I feel like the first film does suffer a little bit in that you don't get the opportunity for William Dafoe to William Dafoe, because he, like you said, he does all his own stunts. He's a really physical dude. He's a really fit guy. Just Yeah, I mean, his performance stood out to me and to the crowd. And the other best actor in those movies is J.K. Simmons. Like, he knows why he's there. He totally gets it. He has got a ham sandwich in his pocket that he doesn't want anyone to know about. That's how crazy his performance is. It's just, and when he came on as well, it was everyone going losing their shit. And his beats of comedy, particularly the first two, but even the third one where he's on medication to keep his heart down, and she's like, Betty Brant's got the buzzing machine, and he keeps like, trying to be really calm and everything. Just picture perfect. That's why they couldn't recast him. That's why that character.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, he's not in Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. He ruined it for everybody. And then they're like, well, fuck it, just bring him back. Like, it doesn't matter. They're the ones that really stand out. Absolutely.
And there's it's a very goofy character, and he's there for just comic relief, and that's it. But there's also a layer to him where Goblin attacks the Daily Bugle, where he doesn't know who Peter Parker is. And he gets him by the throat. He gets J. Jonah Jameson by the throat, and he's like, who gives you the picture of the Spider-Man? J. Jonah Jameson's a fucking asshole. You could say it's Peter Parker, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
He says that it comes in the mail.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Like, behind all that fake ass hair and mustache and assholery, this is a good dude.
Yeah, there absolutely is. He's got integrity. I do like the part where he's like, here, print this photo or whatever, and says it to Robbie Robertson, the wonderful Bill Nunn, R.I.P. And he's like, print that one, Spider-Man, hero or menace, whatever. And Peter's like, you can't say that, Mr. Jameson. It's slander. And he goes, no, it's not. I resent that. Slander spoken in print. It's libel. Like, fucking swish. Just, it's a good screenplay, the first one. David Koepp, I don't like the voiceover guff. Like, hey, I'm Spider-Man. Do you really want to know? My life is not for the faint of heart. Like, would you fucking shut up, you baby? Like, give me a break. You're like, oh, Mary Jane, bloody fucking blah. It's all a little much, to be perfectly honest.
I actually kind of like that.
Oh,
I like that because when you watch Batman, you're like, oh shit, it's Matthew stole it from Spider-Man.
yeah, that's true, I guess. But the other thing as well is, talking about Toby, whatever. He's had really amazing performances in his time. He's in a film with Jake Gyllenhaal called Brothers, where he plays
Brothers, yeah,
which is a really powerful film, and he's good in it.
That's the only non-Spider-Man film I've seen him in.
Yeah. Well, you're fine then. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Wonder Boys is really good too, where he plays like this kind of this very effete wannabe writer who's friends with Michael Douglas's sort of main character there. But yeah, he's whatever he is. And also he's kind of a dick in that he wanted to be paid more for the sequel. So he feigned an injury. Like, he faked that he got hurt while making Seabiscuit, which was a horse riding movie, just so that he could get more money. And they were like, fuck you, we're hiring Jake Gyllenhaal. And that was like, I'm serious, it was a matter of days we could have had Jake Gyllenhaal take over as Spider-Man for Spider-Man 2. The multiverse of where that movie is, I don't know, but fuck, I would. But Jake Gyllenhaal is by leaps and bounds and a better actor. Jake Gyllenhaal could not face the camera the entire time and still be a better actor than Tobey Maguire. Literally have the back of his head on camera all the time, or his bare ass. You'd sell some tickets, I'm telling you, but way better actor. But the person that I just want to talk about real quickly, I'm not going to talk about James Franco because he sucks. I don't like him as an actor, and I don't like him as a human being, so I'm not going to bother. But Kirsten Dunst, she was, had some fame going on for herself. The 90s, Suicide Girls, that kind of thing. Suicide Girls? Not Suicide Girls. The Virgin Suicides, the Sofia Coppola film. Amazing. And of course, Interview with the Vampire, where she played a young woman. She's great, but the material lets her down. She is fucking kidnap bait in all of those films. It is ridiculous. She gets kidnapped twice a movie and always always triggering the second act. So much so that in the third film, it was supposed to be Gwen Stacy, played by
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Bryce Dallas Howard, thank you. But they realized, no, we can't do that because that movie went to production before the script was finished, obviously. And they said, well, it doesn't. There's no connection. There's no reason for Peter to fight so hard to go and save her because he has no connection to Gwen. So it had to be Mary Jane again. And Sam Raimi had to apologize. He's like, I'm sorry, you have to scream a lot again. Like that's all she does. It's really. Whereas if you look at the more recent ones, and again, storytelling is the same as anything. It evolves. You get better at it, and people in general, and also society starts to understand things better and put people in places where they should be. They shouldn't be damsels. They should be ass kickers. Look at Zendaya's performance. Totally whoop ass. And Gwen, she never becomes a victim until that last film, and it's not. And she's the one who says, like, in Amazing Spider-Man 2, when Goblin turns up, the Harry Osborn Goblin, he's like, what are you doing here? You can't be here right now, whatever. And she's like, hey, I fucking chose this, and you just shut up. Like, you don't get to decide who I am and what I do. Whereas those original ones, she's kind of uncertain. She does a really good job with it, except for what the fuck in the third film. And I was laughing like a goddamn hyena from Lion King. When Harry gets amnesia, it's true. I was.
That caught me off guard so hard, man.
It's good, man. That's how I describe it.
Oh god, yeah, that's my favorite joke.
Thank you. I was cackling like Whoopi Goldberg, and in like Harry gets amnesia. Whatever, single rarest neurological condition on the planet, basically. But anyway, it's a comic book movie. And he's like, oh, Mary Jane calls it because, Spider-Man's Spider-Man and I've lost my job because I suck at being on Broadway or whatever it is. And they go over and he's like, oh, you want to get some food together. And they're making a fun omelette together. And then they start dancing to Do the Twist. I'm sorry. I like old music, absolutely. Heaps of the stuff I listen to is pre-1980, it's 50s, 60s, 70s, even 40s stuff. I love sort of, speakeasy kind of jazz music and all the hip hop I listen to is from the early 90s and stuff. I don't listen to a lot of current music. So even if they were, let's say 2004 when the movie came out, even if they are in their early 20s at that particular period of time, maybe they're listening to Pearl Jam or Nirvana, or if you want something more fun, like maybe No Doubt, or, something like that. They're not going to be listening to Do the Twist. Oh, let's get together and listen to music that came out, fucking however long. Like, let's listen to music our grandparents listened to, basically. I just don't buy it. And they do stupid dances, and he spills the omelette, and I'm like, oh, what a waste.
Yeah.
What? Capsicums are expensive these days. I'll tell you that much. Capsicums
have always been expensive.
Yeah, capsicums are rich people's food, that's for sure. That's capsicums, caviar, and Dom Perignon. That's what they have.
And raisins, apparently.
Raisins, yeah. You'll hear a lot of hip hop acts rapping about raisins because they're so expensive.
Yeah, I want to.
It's true.
Yeah. I want to point out one thing. Are we just accepting the fact that Sam Raimi made a blonde play a redhead and a redhead play a blonde?
Well, I don't know if you know about Sam, but he fucking weird. No, I don't know. I guess you're right. You're probably right. Yeah, I've never really thought of that before. Sam Raimi, I'll talk about Sam for a second. He is like the progenitor of low budget filmmaking, or one of the progenitors, if there's a Mount Rushmore of making things on the cheap, he's on it. And he changed the genre overnight. And he also introduced the world to Bruce Campbell, so God bless him, who has great cameos in this film. Everyone hates the third one where he's a French dude, but I find it really endearing, but that's just because I really like...
Do you know why that is?
Why what?
Well, in the fourth one, or I'd say like the fifth one, it would have been revealed that Bruce Campbell was Mysterio all along.
Yeah, see, fucking yes. That would have been amazing. I don't know why they didn't do that for when he was in the... I think he's not a good enough... Like, put him next to Jake Gyllenhaal. That's a hard road to hoe, honestly. but like he would have had the kind of the square-jawed, because the character of the Mysterio originally was an actor. He was a special effects guy and who wanted to be famous, and he just couldn't make it happen. So he turned to being a villain using all of his special effects abilities. But he was a chiseled-jawed kind of like, you know, kind of dude, you know, hands on hips superhero or you know, old school serials hero. And he would have been amazing for that. He would have been amazing for that. And he's got just the right amount of tongue in cheek. He can do drama well enough that he'd be able to pull off some of the more intense moments. But fuck yeah, man. We missed out.
And he's fucking awesome in the goofy moments.
Yeah. And
especially after you've seen Evil Dead 3.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And John Malkovich is the fucking Vulture. I love Michael Keaton. Like, he's great and he's really good in that movie, but it's a certain speed. Like, that is very much a Marvel speed. One of the best villains, totally understandable motivation. He's just, he's a serious businessman, doesn't want people to fuck with his livelihood. Totally get it. John Malkovich being really John Malkovich and playing the Vulture would have been interesting, especially if it had a flitted between, because in the comics and in the TV series, the animated series, he takes a potion to make himself younger. So if they did some cool, like, flitting between him and maybe a young, at the time could have been like Benedict Cumberbatch or something, like a 19-year-old Benedict Cumberbatch, and he was like transforming between one and the other, becoming old and young and old and young. That would have been really interesting too.
I've got a pitch.
Okay, you don't need to put your hand up. It's not class. He just put his hand up. It's so funny.
I just got out of class, man.
Yes,
like 30
Annie,
minutes.
Yes, come up to the blackboard, please. No, that's not how you spell abstemious. Stop drawing penises. Go back to your seat. That's what you would do. Don't pretend it isn't.
He took me back to Superbad, where it's the opening and it's just Jonathan's character just drawing penis all over his fucking notebook. No, I wasn't that.
Sorry. What were you going to say?
Yeah.
Pitch?
Yeah, I've got a pitch.
Okay.
So Sony now, or like 5 years from now, makes a Vulture film with Michael Keaton, but it's the whole serum thing where he takes it to, de-age himself or something, or make himself young. Mm-hmm. And so Vulture is played by John Malkovich, but when he takes a serum, he's played by Michael Keaton.
But they're the same age. In fact, okay. Michael Keaton's probably older. So if anything...
How is he? Okay.
The only thing that happens in that situation is the dude's head gets smaller. Like, so instead of having a 5 head, like Rihanna, the guy salutes like this, he's just got a normal shaped head. So I don't know. I don't know if that would work. I was thinking like a younger. You could even go John Malkovich to fucking, Timothy Chalamet. That'd be pretty funny. But then again, I want him in everything. So I think the general consensus is between the two of us, as far as Spider-Man goes, this is probably, it's very of its time, and it probably misses the mark under a more modern context. Yes? So looking at it with
yes.
Yeah. It's very cartoony. It's very bright. There's not a lot of contrast. There's some very easy performance.
That was my... Yes. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, you go. What were you going to say?
That was my biggest problem with the whole of the trilogy. It's very, very bright. Like, there's no, like, dynamic cinematography there. Like, it's just there. Like, you feel as if each and every... I know that they're doing stuff to make it look like that, but... Like, there's no, like you watch The Amazing Spider-Man, right? And there's shots where he's swinging through New York City, and then there's shots inside the house, and they have a different feel to them. Mm-hmm. When in the Raimi trilogy, when Peter's inside the house talking to Uncle Ben and swinging through New York City, it has the same color palette that just didn't work for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it. There's no tonal shift based on where we are and what information is coming across. Like, the warm and the cool being about character motivation. And also, I don't know who was the DP on. I know Bill Pope was the DP on the second picture. Bill Pope's the cinematographer of The Matrix, and he's amazing. And I think when you say it's not dynamic in terms of its cinematography, what you mean is the color and contrast and
Yes.
light and dark, that kind of thing, tone and texture, as I've talked about before. Like the actual shot choices and angle work and lens choices and stuff. If you think about something like that huge train fight in the middle of the second one, or even the fight between Sandman, and Peter in the third one, where Peter's got the black suit on, there is a lot of really interesting stuff going on there, like in terms of where you are in space, and you can follow everything as well. Everything kind of knits together. It's really well edited. Sam Raimi has a tendency to hire two directors and have them both work on the cut at the same time and then kind of blend the best of the two. So you really do get a well executed picture, but the way that it looks is very, very flat, very glossy. The way that the Marvel films look now, they all kind of have a uniformity to them that is just about, okay, let's put lights here, lights here, lights here, and make sure everyone can see everything. Whereas, I'm not 100% sure that Mark Webb is as competent a director as the people who have directed the pictures either side of him. I don't know, but whoever was working as his DP, I'm gonna look it up, and whoever was working on his special effects crew, particularly for the first film, absolutely understood how to make things more dynamic and more drama to just the visual landscape of what goes on, even so much so that the suit looks completely different, and it's got a real different feel to it, whereas Toby's one is it was made to be easily animated, if you understand what I'm meaning.
Yeah. The cinematographer for The Amazing Spider-Man was John Schwartzman.
Yeah, and who was he's a director of photography on Pearl Harbor, Armageddon. Well, we won't we'll forgive him for that. Oh yeah, Jurassic World.
I love Armageddon. Fuck you for saying that.
No, Armageddon rules. Armageddon rules the score, man. It is
Yes.
so huge and dumb. I love it. So good. I watched that, we had a movie marathon here sometimes when me and Emily have a day off together. And we watched that it was that and Air Force One. And something else that I forget. Air Force One's another big, stupid 90s action movie. And she liked it so much, she wants to, like, if we ever get a new cat, now that Splodgy's passed on, she wants to name one of them Air Force One. Our cat. We're going to have three. We're going to have Air Force One, Karate. That's a good name for a cat, right? Karate. And Paul. Because I just think it's really, really funny to be like, if you're out there, the cats are out, in the yard or whatever, and you actually have to go out there and go, Air Force One, Karate, Paul. Like, I can't imagine what the neighbors would think. I'd be like, what the fuck's going on over there? Are they calling for someone? Are they saying that they're doing those things? Like, it would make people really confused, and I love it.
So the spies from another dimension, they're calling in code words.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, maybe it's like Bucky in fucking Civil War,
Civil War.
Yeah, where he's like, trolley car, homecoming, whatever it is.
Trolley car.
It is. That's one of them. One of the. I mean, he obviously says Russian, but one of the words is I think it's trolley car. Maybe I'm wrong. Correct me in the comments. I love doing that. If I get something fucked up, correct me in the comments. You can do it. So, it's, again, nostalgia. Totally love it. But with a more modern eye, and as much as I know about the aesthetic that I enjoy in these films, and just the way I want my storytelling to be, it's all a little bit cookie cutter and a little bit too safe, those films. Apart from the third one, which is fucking batshit crazy.
Yeah. I don't care what people say about the third one. It's my favorite out of those three.
There's just so much silly shit going on in that film, and and that's where they kind of were like. I mean, I know they forced him to have. Sam Raimi wanted Vulture and Sandman for that film, And they forced him to use Venom because Venom was enormously popular at the time. In the 90s, like, you couldn't go anywhere. You go to any fucking comic convention, there's 14 dudes with Venom t-shirts or dressed up as Venom. He was just a massive character. And it wasn't very well executed. There's also some enormous plot holes in that film. Like, all of a sudden, you know, I know that the symbiote does transfer information from one person to another when it changes bodies, so it makes sense that Topher Grace's Eddie Brock would know who Spider-Man is, but to then go and find Sandman and know all about his life, like, what the fuck? And then the the one that really, really fucking gets me, and I nearly shouted it out because there was a lot of people shouting stuff out. I feel like I'm talking super fast, I'm sorry. But anyway, I just had such a good time. At the beginning of Spider-Man 3, right? You've got the Thomas Hayden Church Sandman character. He's escaping the people who are chasing him, the police, right? And they send a Doberman Pinscher or a German Shepherd after him, and he punches it. He punches the dog, and everyone in the crowd went, "Ooh, piece of shit! You're a dickhead!" And all that stuff. And then later on, after he's like had his moment and he's gotten his ass whooped by Harry, who's now lying dead, being speared like his dad, he's standing there and turning into sand. He's like, "I'm sorry," and Toby's like, "I forgive you," and he flitters off into the night, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's lovely." And I was so tempted, but I didn't do it because I don't shout out at the movies. I'm not that guy. I wanted to say, hang on a second, do you all remember that he punched a dog earlier? Maybe he can get fucked. Maybe he can get fucked, is my thought. And the other part as well was, there was a lot of young people there, actually, people in their probably early 20s, I guess. Some were there for ironic reasons and to be, you know, Instagram people or whatever. Some were legitimately there because they love Spider-Man, including the group behind me, like directly behind me, having such a fun time, shouting lines from all the different things and whatever. And there was one part where they, at the end of Spider-Man 3, where Peter goes into the cabaret place where Mary Jane's singing I'll Never Love Again, and then they kind of reach out and touch hands, and that's the end of the picture. The girl behind me goes, "Yeah, but he's an asshole." I was like, you know what, sweetheart? Yes! That is, you've just encapsulated the entirety of this trilogy much better than I could. So, but yeah, so that's Sam Raimi's trilogy. But do you want to do like a ranking, or should we do like our favorite lines or favorite moments? Like, what do you want to do? We're just kind of off the cuff here, you know? Yeah.
I do have to say one thing though, before we jump into ranking and running up. Mm-hmm. I do disagree with you we'll get fucked. I don't know why I'm doing this. Hey man, we have a podcast together. I'm not gonna get fucked. Anyone else get yeah.
Such a good excuse. Even if you're not doing a podcast, someone just yells at you in the street. You know, you're driving and they're like, "Hey, fucking, you're a piece of shit." Like, whatever, get your own podcast. And they're like, "What? We're in cars. That doesn't make any sense." Yes, it does. Fuck you. Yeah. Like that classic idea, if someone comes up to you and is antagonistic and wants to start some shit with you, you start a separate fight. Like, you start another fight with them that has nothing to do with their fight. Person gets in your face, yeah. "Hey, motherfucker, I thought I saw you looking at my girlfriend. I'll kick your ass." And you go, "Oh, yeah? Well, what about my jacket?" And they're like, "What? My jacket? You borrowed it 2 weeks ago. I didn't say you could keep it. I want my fucking jacket back." And then they think you're insane. And they go away. That's the coward's defense. Sorry, what were you going to say that you don't agree with me about? It's a good technique. Use it. Yeah. I had a dude come up to me. I was standing outside of a pub here in Melbourne called the Esplanade Hotel. And the band I was playing in was doing a gig. And we were standing out the front, and I still smoked at the time. So I was out the front having a cigarette. And this was fucking going on 20 years ago. And a Hummer pulled up, one of those stretch Hummers, and a massive bunch of drunk dudes got out on a Bucks or something like that. And a guy came up to me, like, people pick fights with me a lot. I think I might have mentioned this before. I don't know why. Maybe I have a face that looks like it needs smacking. I'm not really sure. But I do get singled out by nutters, you know, and people who who want to start shit. So anyway, these two dudes come up and stand right in front of me and 3 behind him. So there's 5 guys there. I'm on my own. All my friends are inside. And the guy was like, my friend here thinks he could kick your ass. And I was like, well, your friend's probably right. And he's like, well, you want to start something? I'm like, hey man, I'm a pacifist, all right? No, non-violent. He goes, oh yeah, you know you want to start something? I said, well, look, are you at least going to give me my jacket back? And he was like, what? I said, your friend. If he wants to fight me, can I at least have my jacket back first? And they were all like looking around at each other. I'm like, look, he borrowed it 2 weeks ago. It's my favorite fucking jacket. I wanted it to wear tonight. Would you just give it to me and then we can talk about fighting? And it took about 2 or 3 minutes of me just going insane about this jacket for them to just kind of like, oh yeah, fuck you. And like one of them pushed me and the other one gave me the finger and then they just walked off. And I was like, whoo, well averted, Crazy Reegs. Like, I mean, I could have just like popped in with an uppercut, but there was 5 of them. I would have got trounced. One of them was about 8 foot tall as well. Huge, big fucking, I think it was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Basketball joke. Anyway, it's a good defense. That was the point.
How do you fight an 8 feet tall dude? So you just run, dude.
A lot of dick punching. A lot of punches of the dick. That's what it is. The Cockney cock puncher.
This is where it rolls.
Yeah. Just we're back to it again. That's what I do. Well, all you do, you grab his balls and you pull it downwards like a slinky. Is that a slinky? Like that. And that's how you win. Ladies, everybody, that's how you win.
The scientific fact that if you grab the balls and squeeze them for 10 minutes straight, the man's gonna die.
Wow, I wouldn't want to. I mean, that's a long. Yeah. You ever held on to anything for 15 minutes? That's a long time. 30 seconds is a long time to be holding on to somebody else's testicles. Like even your own. That's you've got to be trying to get somewhere. But if you're doing it to a stranger, that is a commitment in time that I don't have. You know what I'm saying?
I don't remember. I saw it in a show where like the boss of the bad guys used to kill people like that. It was like, I'm stealing that, but also never using that.
What the fuck show was this? Sounds like something from The Boys, honestly.
I don't know.
That's wild, man. But yeah, it is a really good practical defense if you don't want to actually have to, fight anybody. And the other thing you need to remember, folks, is Dylan Moran, the Irish comedian, says, it doesn't matter how big the fucker is, they all have a groin and a neck. So just putting it out there.
That's your leave.
If you can't protect yourselves from crazy comedy, do it with neck punches. Anyway, we were talking about Spider-Man at some point. You were going to say you talked with me about something, and then what was it?
Well, you don't fucking remember.
Oh no! I'm sorry.
Oh no! Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I don't agree with you for when you said that Dr. Otto Davis is the most sympathetic villain.
Okay.
I think it's Sandman.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably. It just, he has a very particular motivation in his daughter. It's just not played very well because Thomas Hayden Church is a side of roast beef. That guy is amazing. You see his forearms in that movie? My God, he looked like the thing that Rocky punches to get trained in the Rocky film. It's just a huge, big, hulking, Frankenstein-looking motherfucker. Like, not a lot of sympathy garnered there. I don't know. Judging a book by its cover. Judging a book by its sandy cover. Well, should we let's what do you want to do? Do you want to do a ranking of these 3, like top to bottom, or do you want to do some best scenes, best lines kind of thing?
Right, let's start with the ranking and then let's do like top 3 scenes or lines, whatever you want.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, for me, number 1, number 3. We'll do number 3 and go up. Yeah, the third one.
Okay.
Yeah, Spider-Man 3 is at the bottom because I just think it's a lot of stuff.
Oh, I know what's yours.
It's a lot of stuff in a small. Yeah, of course you do. It's a lot of shit in the same bag, and none of it really kind of works. The scenes don't connect together. It's about getting from set piece to set piece as opposed to an organic shift in story based on conflict. And that's what I dig on. I dig on storytelling more than I do on, even though I do have a much greater appreciation now of it post Spider-Thon because of how ludicrous it is and because of how much fun it is if you just give it a chance. I still think it's the least effective one. What about you?
Oh, okay. And I know what yours is, and mine's just yours flipped.
Is it? That's all right. That's why we're a good podcast buddies, because we don't just always agree with each other.
My number 3 is Spider-Man 2.
Okay. All right. Explain yourself, sir.
I think we just did.
Yeah, you kind of did. Yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
I don't know. I think it's probably the most overhyped of all of them. I think that's what like bothers me the most nowadays with that with that trilogy, is because people are like, oh, this is amazing, and that's amazing. I don't really find Spider-Man 2 that amazing, and Spider-Man 2 is just mainly amazing because of its villain, but that goes on for Spider-Man 1 as well.
Yeah, that's true.
And
they do a lot of the heavy lifting, as villains tend to do in these kind of pictures.
And Doctor
Oh no! It's no longer just silly names. We're singing them now. We're singing the silly names. Oh my God! I was listening to the Book of Mormon all yesterday, so that's obviously what that is. Apologies. Lunacy. Keep going.
I just want to clarify. I have no idea what just happened.
Neither do I. I have no idea. I just get possessed by these demons sometimes, and they come out in the form of song. Ludicrous. So yeah, okay. Well, that's all right. I understand. Well, in that case, I think we're both agreed that number 2 is number 1.
Yes.
Yeah. As I said before, classic, great storytelling, has a really great nostalgia button, and it's perfect. It's like Batman Begins. It's perfect. Like it does everything you need it to do in order to be able to tell that story, in order to be able to tell that character effectively from end to end, from inception to hero at the end of the film. By the way, Batman Begins is one of the best screenplays ever written. Just putting it out there. Perfect 4-act structure. Like, study it. It will teach you more about hero stories and how to tell, how to have everyone have a satisfying arc, how to tell a good villain, all that stuff than any other picture, superhero or otherwise. It's also, again, as I said before, really, really good because it's a standalone. It's just the story about Spider-Man, Wolverine, possible cameo besides. It's great to just follow this and not have all the baggage that you currently have with every superhero property that you watch.
Absolutely. And like you said, it doesn't really need a sequel or any other follow-up. It's a very condensed and it's a friendly movie.
It is, yeah. It's anyone can jump in. It's
a very wholesome. That's the word. It's a very wholesome film.
Super wholesome. Yeah. Even more so than the other two.
I started the trend of Spider-Man films ending on a, what I say, in a graveyard. Sorry.
Yeah. Holy shit. So in that case, my number 1's number 2, just because I think it's visually much more interesting. You're dialed into these characters in a more interesting way. It is really cheesy and cheap in a lot of places, but it has, and also like the conflict of an existential crisis, like he says in No Way Home, being the thing that stops him being able to web and have his powers. Like, that's interesting to me. A hero in crisis is always really interesting. But so that means your number 1 is number 3. And I dig that a lot. I expect nothing less because you're such you skew different than everyone. You subvert the established idea of what is and what isn't, and I adore that about you.
Thank you. Just a bit to explain. There's a bit of layer into why I feel like 3 is number 1 for me. Mm-hmm. It's because the first 2 actually have Spider-Man villains in them. The third one has 3 villains of Spider-Man in them. But it's only in the third one that you realize that Peter Parker and Spider-Man's biggest enemy is himself and his ego.
Yep.
you don't see that in number 1 and number 2 that much.
No.
Even if it's there, it's very little. But it's like when he goes full emo, it's a meme and all. But that's him. It's not a version of him. That's the thing that Peter hides from everyone that came out. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally get it. Totally get it. And perfectly justified reasons. And if you all don't agree with out there, get your own damn podcast. Well, let's go through as well. We'll go from 1 to 3, and we'll do like favorite scene and favorite line. Yeah. Oh, well, you be the firster.
Okay. So favorite scene in the first one.
It's the upside down pointy nipple kiss.
Can we go back to that because it's a good time to continue the conversation that we had.
Sure.
So when I was watching the first one, I messaged Reek that Mary Jane kissed Spider-Man without his consent. And what'd you say?
Well, I mean, he's Spider-Man. He lets her pull the mask down. He's like, wait. And then he doesn't say anything else. Like, I think we can sort of, if he didn't want it, he'd have webbed her in the face with his web shooters. That's not something else.
Okay, listen to me.
He didn't drop down.
He's hanging. He's hanging upside down, right? All the blood is rushing to his brains, so he can't think properly. And the only thing he has protecting him is the mask. So when she tries to pull the mask, he says, "Wait," because he doesn't want anyone to know that he's Peter Parker inside the mask.
Right.
Correct. He doesn't say wait so that she can wait and pull half of the mask and kiss him. He says wait because all the blood is rushing to his fucking head.
You say,
and then he can't do anything, and he can't be kissing him. You see?
Okay. You say that, and I understand the point. But he's Spider-Man. There must be some sort of thing where he can hang upside down and it's not an issue. But the other thing, biologically, I think it probably would have been evened out, because if his interest in Mary Jane is anything to go by, and the state that she is currently in, dripping wet in that alley, is anything to go by, I think the fact that all the blood in his head might have been evened out by a huge fucking spider boner that he would have had off camera. You notice he didn't see that part of his body in that shot because he had a fucking... he was harder than Chinese algebra, mate. And I'm telling you, and he had a little bit of a kiss and he whipped himself away and he went home and beat it like it owed him money. Like, that's... I'm telling you. That's how you counteract the spider head full with blood thing, I reckon.
This is what we do here.
This is
every week.
We'll get back to erections at some point. Why not? Funny, during the making of that scene, because he was legitimately upside down, Tobey Maguire, in costume, and the rain was coming down, he kept like not being able to breathe because the water was going into his mouth and nose while he was trying to do it. So as iconic as it is, it wasn't the easiest thing to film.
Yeah, it was a nightmare.
Yeah, understandably. Okay, so sorry, getting back to your favourite line and favourite moment from that one. It's obviously not the spider erection.
Yeah, that never actually happened.
Yeah, hey, it didn't happen to you, all right? I've decided what had happened for me. Get your own podcast. Did
you wear the Spider-Man onesie when you went?
No, because it would have been... We were talking last week, I can't remember, folks, if it was off air or if we actually mentioned it in the podcast. I have a Spider-Man onesie that I wear in winter sometimes, but it's not a going out one. Like, in order to go to the bathroom in that, just to have a number one, I have to take it nearly all the way off because the zip doesn't go down far enough. It's like zipped up to the middle of my chest, and then you've got to like step out of it like it's a onesie. So it would have been impractical to say the least for 20 hours. I was just wearing jeans and a Spider-Man t-shirt, and then halfway through I changed into my pajama pants at like 3 a.m.
Nice.
Good times.
Yeah. So favorite scene in the first one is... God. I'm not going with with great power comes great responsibility.
It's too easy.
Yeah. Also too boring.
Yeah.
I would say the first one is my favorite scene is when he beats a Flash, like in the hallway. When he beats a Flash Thompson.
Flash. Oh, okay, right. I was like, when he beats the Flash, I'm like, you're watching the wrong film and universe. Yeah, the flip's a bit much, but Joe Manganiello's bringing it too. Like, he's really great in that, even though he was fucking 48 years old when he made that film or whatever, but supposed to be.
No, he wasn't. He's 48 now.
He's 52 if he was a day, all right? Let me tell you. Tobey Maguire was 26, playing a high school senior, which is interesting, but he's got a little baby face. Okay, cool. What's your favorite line then?
I wanted to do the voice. I'm not going to do the voice, but it's "We'll meet again, Spider-Man."
So fucking great, and he sells the shit out of that too. Like, it's really good. He's so fucking awesome. Well, that's okay. Well, my favorite is a Defoe moment as well. Not the line, but my favorite moment is him, the duel in the mirror thing. Like we talked about, just fucking Defoe masterclass. That guy he's like we were talking the other day. He's like Kevin Bacon. He's never bad. He's always good. No one ever goes, oh, William Defoe sucks in that movie. No, he fucking doesn't. And my favorite line is it's great power comes great responsibility adjacent, because remember when Uncle Ben's dropping Ben out the front of the library and he says, with great power comes great responsibility. He goes, I know I'm not your father. And he's like, then stop pretending to be. And just like super harsh. And then later on, Uncle Ben dies. They don't get to reconcile that moment. And Peter graduates and he goes up to his bedroom and Aunt May comes in and he's crying and she sits down and he's like, I missed him a lot today. She's like, I did too. And he's like, I can't stop thinking about the last time we spoke. He tried to tell me something important and I threw it in his face. Like, that's such a clear motivational turn for that second act to start. And Toby really does sell that moment. It's probably the best acting he does in all three of the pictures.
You know what's not the best acting he does in the first one?
Any of the rest of it? No, what?
When he starts crying. He started crying and I started laughing.
Yeah, there was a few chuckles going on at the Astor too, because he blubbers. Like, whereas, Andrew Garfield, he's like screaming, Uncle Ben, someone help, yelling into the night. Just, the primal scream of it all, much more powerful, yeah.
Yeah.
So what about
number two? You go first.
I'll go first. Okay. Probably my favorite line is it's so stupid. Earlier in the film, when he meets up with Otto Octavius, he's like, "You want to win a woman over? Feed her poetry, right?" And then he's like trying to half kind of win Mary Jane back, so he's reading this poetry, and then they meet at that gala where Mary Jane is going to now marry J. Jonah Jameson's son, who would end up becoming the werewolf in the Werewolf by Night. But that's beside the point. They're at this thing, and she's like, "I can't keep doing this," and he's like, "I've been reading poetry," and Mary Jane goes, "Whatever that means." Like, that's just beautiful moment. And the highlight of that that picture is the train fight. Like, it's so well choreographed, so well executed between practical and CG on-set camera work and the elevated trains that they actually shot in Chicago, because as far as I understand, New York doesn't have an elevated transit system like that. It's all underground. And just him at the end, saving the day and kind of getting knocked out from the effort of it. And the guy's like, geez, look at him. He's just a kid. Yeah, really, really great sort of 5 to 7 minutes of that picture.
That's my favorite line.
What is?
He's just a kid.
Yeah.
That's my favorite line.
Even though it's Tobey Maguire and the guy's got fucking 5 o'clock shadow at fucking 10 a.m. But yeah, it is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
If that's your favorite line, what's your favorite moment then?
Well, I've got 2 favorite lines, but it's hard. It's really hard not to put the train sequence.
It's so great.
Right? It's really hard not to put, so I'm not going to do it.
That's a good call.
it's when he puts on the. My favorite scene would either be when he first like connects with the arms. It's either that or like before that when he's sitting with his wife and Peter and like that conversation is like, I love this kid. Like that.
Yeah. They're doing, science talk back and forth or whatever. Yeah. They do have a really sweet relationship, which gets really great payoff in No Way Home for sure. All right. So number 3, you've got to go first because this is your favorite, you complete fucking lunatic.
You know what's weird? I actually don't remember any lines from the third one.
Well, there you go. Too busy watching all those awesome, spectacular visuals.
Yeah. Fuck. I would say it's like, oh god, this is a very bad joke, but I'm gonna make it, and it's my favorite line. It's when it's the all hope is lost moment where Venom and Sandman are kicking the shit out of Peter Parker, and like his mask is all ripped off, and then Harry comes, and Peter says, "Harry, you came."
Yes, and then I arrived. Oh, sorry, you meant... I did. I came. I jerked off before I came. I don't want to go into a fight with a huge boner. You know that can be troublesome in an alley, so he's got to knock out that easy one before you fight a Sandman. You know how you do it. Talk about penises an awful lot. We're going to need to change the name of the podcast.
No.
Cool. Well, my favorite scene in the third picture is probably I don't know. Okay, I'll do favorite scene because of its action is the first fight with Sandman after he gets the Venom suit and he just fucking trounces him because it's so much more visceral and violent than it has been before because he's got this symbiote, which is pretty cool. And then my favorite like line, I guess, would be the where he's in the flat, where he's going to his flat, and there's Mr. Dickovich and his beautiful daughter, the beautiful skinny daughter that he's got, and she's like adores Pete, and she's like making him cake and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry that I yelled at you the other day." And he goes, "It's okay, an orange," and he goes to give him a piece of orange. He's like, "No, thanks. It was nothing to get mad about." And he goes, "It's okay. If you feel bad about it, you could buy me pizza sometime. Today's good." Like, I fucking love that guy so much. There's another one too. I can't remember if it's in that film or if it's in the other one where he's like, kicks open the door and there's Mr. Dickovich sitting with his daughter and the other 3 guys behind him, the fucking Russian dudes or whatever they are. And he's like, "Rent." And the guy, and he goes, "Hi." And he goes, "Hi. What's hi? Can I spend it?" It's so silly and cartoon.
That's in the second one.
Yeah. Oh, and J. Jonah Jameson's great in that as well. He goes, "Got your wife on the line. She wants to let you know that she lost the checkbook. Thanks for the good news." Like, he's so good. Do you want the Chanel or the chintz for the wedding reception? Whichever one's cheaper. Like, he's just, everything that comes out of J.K. Simmons' mouth is fucking gold.
Yeah, it's just gold. Yeah. The line in the third one where he's trying to fire Peter Parker because he's not taking like good pictures of Spider-Man. Because Peter Parker is trying to get away from Spider-Man because that makes sense somehow.
Sure.
But and he's like, "You're fired and get lost" or something. And then Betty Brant calls in and says that the photographer for your son's function is cancelled. And he's like, "Hey, come back! I need you."
Yeah, you're rehired. Come back. Yeah, at half the rate or whatever. So good. Well, yeah. So
I have my favorite scene left.
Do you? I thought you did yours. It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
No, that was my favorite line.
Oh, okay.
How do you
I didn't think we get to that. Yeah, go. Fucking jumping all over.
Now that I pointed it out, now I forgot. I hit it.
It's always the way.
It's the way of the Jedi.
Fucking don't even get me started on Kenobi. That shit was tight. We'll talk about it at some stage. But
yeah, we'll talk about it after the call. God damn it. Yeah, my favorite scene could probably like it's 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 Toby taking out the Venom suit. That's my favorite scene.
Yeah. Well, it's very traditional as well. That's how it happens in the comics. He goes into a church, the bell tolls, it comes off him, and Eddie happens to be in the church below it. But he's actually in the comic books, he's about to commit suicide, and then he gets the Venom suit, and whatever.
What the fuck? Why didn't they go with that?
Because they don't want to talk about it's 2006 or 7, mate. We don't talk about mental illness the same way. You don't want to have the word suicide come up in your.
We still don't talk about it. Nothing's fucking changed.
Well, yeah, but I think there's more. Like, for instance, there's sometimes there's warnings, like the TV show Severance on Apple TV, it says at the start, this episode contains themes around suicide and stuff. And even most recently, the theatre that me and Emily worked for, the Little Athenaeum, that had a show where it actually begins with a woman having survived her attempted suicide, and we needed to put things up to say as much. So I think, yeah, they probably steered away from that. What is weirder, though, is that fucking Topher Grace goes in there with his fucking frosted tips and asks God to murder Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever read a book? What the fuck?
Where is that jump from talking about suicide to killing the other person?
Yeah, exactly. I want God to kill a person as opposed to I've decided to end my life because I feel like I'm worthless, which would have made more sense dramatically, but whatever. There you go.
Yeah.
That's it, ladies and gents.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. That's Spider-Mans, the 3 Spider-Mans with Tobey Maguire. Thank you, Sam Raimi, for all that nonsense. And next week, we're going to cover mine and Addie's favourite of the Spider-Man pictures, Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. And we'll talk about why they're our favourite at that time and why they are my favourite now more than they've ever been, because I saw them again with at the cinema with fresh eyes, and I feel like it's really the high watermark. And I love Andrew Garfield.
I do too. Why are you doing the outro? We've got questions.
No, I know. I'm just doing the outro from this part of the episode, and then I was going to say, but we do have questions. Was what I was going to say. That's the outro to that part of that portion of the show. Now we've got some questions, probably Spider-Man related questions. Are they Spider-Man related?
Yeah, I mean that's the theme, right? Spider-Man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, why don't you throw to the theme song and we'll do it. Okay, so how many questions do we have today?
We have got 4 questions.
Ooh, I love question time.
We've got the fantastic 4 questions here.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. I must say, friends, I really do. I love doing this podcast. It's one of my favorite things. I really missed that we didn't get a chance to do it last week. And one of the reasons I love it so much is because people interact and they ask us questions. I love answering questions. It's like conversation's my shit. I really dig it. Interesting. I went and saw... went back to the Astor last Monday. Actually, it was Sunday afternoon, and saw a 40th anniversary 4K remaster of Blade Runner: The Final Cut. And it's beautiful. And I went with my good friend Tim from my film club, and he's actually my business partner Dan's brother. And we went and did that. And then afterwards, we went and had dinner and just fucking talked for ages about Blade Runner and science fiction. And that's what I dig. I love talking about fun shit and cool shit, and that's why I love when people send in their questions and be part of the whole show. So please continue to do it. Let's make it happen.
Yes, please. This is my favorite part of the show as well. Yeah. Talking to you is a treat, but then just having to interact with the audience, that's totally amazing.
Super fun. Okay, so what's question number 1?
Question number 1. What character would you have as the host of the Venom in MCU, Eddie or someone else?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Kind of. I'm still figuring out, because if you do have an Eddie Brock, either we'll meet him when Peter is in college, with him in college, or it's just Tom Hardy that already exists, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I think you're probably Tom Hardy out of it. you know, the No Way Home stinger was the bit of goop being left in that dimension. Honestly, just off the top of my head, you know, you could do a new character or have it be, you know, someone who's already established, not a hero, but someone's established or whatever. I'd honestly give it to Mary Jane. No, it's not.
Oh,
Mary Jane.
wow.
Michelle Jones, MJ.
Michelle Jones, yeah.
I'd give it to Zendaya and have that be the thing that triggers her to be able, because Venom is
because Venom knows everything. Is all knowing.
He like carries the symbiote carries information, and Eddie Brock knows everything. That's what he's being explained in that last little thing. He's like, I go and see that Spider-Man person, and I think she gets the Venom costume, becomes Venom, interacts with Spider-Man in some way, is able to then, you know, usurp the information that Spider-Man has to realize that he cast the spell so that she would forget Peter Parker. And then because the Venom suit has corrupted her and made her, you know, villainous and hateful and angry and rageful, she gets mad at him for fucking with her mind. And he's like, I don't care if you are Spider-Man or the person I used to love. You raped me of my memories. And, you know, I'm going to absolutely destroy you. I'm going to destroy everything in your life. I'm just going to tear you down. So that would be more interesting than either Peter getting it or, you know, instituting another Eddie Brock, like, you know, yeah. And it would be cool to see a little bit more, a different dynamic to what Venom could be.
Agreed. My answer, like, that's fucking awesome. Like, they should really do that.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense.
Kevin Feige.
Well, not Kevin Feige, because it's Sony, so not Kevin Feige. Avi Arad.
Or Amy Pascal.
Yeah, Amy Pascal, sorry. Not Avi Arad. He's gone
Amy,
now.
you're named after a company that makes lollies in Australia. But yes, you should absolutely take my idea and give me money. Give me some of that fat Spider-Man stacks.
Can we have that as the episode? Legacy of Spider-Man, fat
Spider-Man stacks. It's not a bad idea, honestly. Now we'll do that for when we do the Tom Holland one because of No Way Home making $1 bazillion or whatever. Anyway, so what would who's your Venom?
Mine would honestly be, I mean, I know they're not in like the same college or whatever, and Peter's doing or is on his way to do GED now at the end of No Way Home. Mm-hmm. But I would love to see Flash Thompson be the Venom. So he can finally channel all the hate that he has for Spider-Man or for Peter.
That'd be interesting too, you know, a bit of, like representation, have a person of color in that role as well. That's you know, a more modern way to tell that story. And an interesting thing as well, like he would all of a sudden be experiencing power he's never understood. It would be a great duality of where, you know, Peter Parker receives this power as a small, meek teenager, superhuman strength. Flash, who is clearly an egomaniac because he's hiding, you know, inner trauma and the fact that he has got a bit of a Napoleon complex. All of a sudden, he gets all this power, and he's like, well, I run this shit now. So yeah, fucking, we have good ideas, sir.
Yeah, and like don't make it as like a one-off villain. Like have him be the Harry Osborn of Peter of MCU Peter Parker. Like have him like so he gets the Venom thing, or like he gets attached to Venom, and then he knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, so he seeks him out and he says, I've got this and I'm changing, but I need your help. And they become friends, and Peter like tries to like teach him to you know use his ability for good, and then he turns in like the second film.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I'll tell you another idea I had. I wrote a treatment for a movie some years ago now called Peter Parker, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., wherein instead of him getting bitten by the spider, it was Harry. And Harry was kind of the nerdy, geeky dude. And Peter was actually a jock. Like he was a big dude and he just trains really hard and, you know, ends up getting recruited by Nick Fury because he's a really fit young guy who's super smart as well, and he goes and works for Shield, and then Harry kind of gets corrupted by the power of by being Spider-Man, so much so that he accidentally kills Mary Jane and then loses his mind. And it's about Peter Parker just as a normal human being, but as an agent of Shield going after the now evil Spider-Man. So you could introduce a Harry and have that, because there's no Harry in that universe, right?
There are no Osborns.
There's no Osborns at all in the MCU at this current point in time. So you can introduce him as being, and he could be your aggregate. Just an idea, and nobody steal that idea.
Do you know what though? That would be fucking awesome if that's like a what if episode.
It would be, right? That's how I pitched it. It was like a what if thing, and I sent it to Marvel and didn't get any response. Because I didn't write it in a comic script, I wrote it as a screenplay because I don't know how. At that particular period of time, I didn't have the software to do graphic novel writing. I do now that I have Final Draft because it's got a graphic novel template. But at the time, I just did it as a Word thing. So anyway, beside the point, what's question number 2 or 3?
Yeah, question number 2.
Yep.
Question number 2 is other actors that would play the role of Spider-Man more successfully. Or Spider-Man successfully. Sorry.
I don't know if it's a case.
Recast Tobey Maguire. That's the question.
Oh, okay. Well,
if you would recast Tobey Maguire, who would it be?
At that particular
time? Can't be Jake Gyllenhaal though.
Okay. Well, if you're talking about at that particular time, we can't say, well, they fucking did it with Andrew Garfield or whatever, and that Miles Morales didn't exist then yet either, so we can't do that. Heath Ledger was asked to do it at one point, and he said no because he's like, I have no previous with this. I would rather leave it to someone whose dream it was to be Spider-Man. But again, he's probably too tall. But that doesn't mean anything. He's just a really good actor. But at that period of time, Wes Bentley. Wes Bentley was the young man in American Beauty, who was sort of like the tragic young kid whose dad was a closeted homosexual, and he was a pot dealer who was dealing weed to Kevin Spacey, and he was like filming things all the time and whatnot. And he was really good. He's currently in the film Yellowstone, the TV show Yellowstone, I think. Yeah, he would have been good. He's kind of a little bit more intensity to him than Toby. So that would be my pick.
Interesting. I would pick Michael J. Fox.
Yeah. But that'd have to be early 80s. That'd have to be, you couldn't do that in 2000. In 2000, Michael J. Fox would have been in his 30s. And he was also, at that point in time, he was suffering from Parkinson's because that was going on. He left the TV show Spin City in probably 1996, 97 or something because the Parkinson's was starting to take over and affect his performances. So, yeah, you'd be talking like just before Back to the Future. It's not a bad idea. Yeah. Just like I said, it needs to be earlier, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, like, Tobey Maguire was 4 years from being 30 in 2002, so I don't think it makes that big of a difference.
I think it would for who Michael J. Fox is at that time. Like I said, he would have been probably 35-ish. I'd say maybe wrong, but yeah, he like his health would have affected that a lot. But he would be great. Like, you're not wrong. Like, he's a great Peter Parker for sure.
And just because I love those films. Have Uncle Ben be, I'm gonna say, have Uncle Ben be Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, why not? Why the fuck not?
Please do that.
And Susan Sarandon as Aunt May. Why not? Fuck it all. Yeah, that's a good idea. All right, what's number 3?
What are your both favorite Spider-Man animated shows?
Like the TV, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's the OG Spider-Man from the 90s, which was like 3 seasons, 100 and something episodes, real tight storytelling connected to, each other. And it was very, very comic booky. I loved it. Great score, great musical, great voice performances, lots of cameos. Like, every episode was like Daredevil X-Men, Punisher. Yeah, super cool.
And that show was also like gave hope for the X-Men show, which was like if Spider-Man works, then so does X-Men.
Yeah, they did cross over at one point too.
Yeah.
Very cool, because they all thought.
So yeah. Well, mine's not that. Even though like I love that show, I watched that show quite a lot. Mine's the Ultimate Spider-Man. That was after Spectacular Spider-Man, which a lot of people like. My favorite one's it's the guy Peter Parker in the Ultimate Spider-Man looks like Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker.
Yeah,
it's weird.
It was around that time too, and teaming up with people every episode with the crew that was being put together, and I dig that too. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like we had White Tiger and Luke Cage and Nova and White Tiger, Luke Cage, Nova, and Spider-Man under Nick Fury as the secret team.
Yeah,
fucking awesome.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I'm gonna check that.
And and this show introduced me to Miles Morales, who I fucking love.
Yeah,
so
such a great character. We'll get into him when we talk about Spider-Verse. But what's the last question?
Last question is, Spider-Man 4, 5, and 6 would have been really exhausting sequels. What do you think?
If they're from the Tobey films? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
You too much of a good thing always leaves one wanting less, I find. And if you have a look at the track where those movies were going, unless they pulled it back and made it a bit more simple in that fourth one, and maybe just had two villains, just Spider-Man, real easy, no sort of big overarching existential thing, just him doing Spider-Man shit, kind of what you would imagine that the Tom Holland pictures will be now that he's on his own. You can just do Spider-Man adventures, this week on Spider-Man kind of thing. Very much. Yeah. But by the time they got to the sixth one, if they weren't rehashing villains, they'd be getting to fucking Hydro Man and all these B-listers who you didn't even, no one gives a shit about, fucking Scorpion and stuff. So yeah, I do think that it would have tired. 6 movies is a lot as well. And if you got to think, Tobey Maguire would have been 32, 33 when Spider-Man 3 came out. You make another 3 movies and it takes you, let's say conservatively, 7 more years. He would have been close to 40 by the time he'd finished, which isn't a bad idea if you go a certain way, the way that they did in Spider-Verse and had like an older Spider-Man, be the character who you're kind of following.
Yeah, but they didn't have Miles Morales by then anyway. Miles Morales was 2011?
Yeah, it was late 2000s, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, there is an interesting story there about that, but that's not what it would have been. They would have tried to keep him as young as possible for as long as possible. So,
agreed.
Yes.
Agreed.
Whoever asked that question, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And I do too.
Wonderful.
Unless they made Mary Jane Spider-Woman somehow.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Again, or they get together and have a kid. You jump 10 years in the future and you've got Spider-Kid. Something like that, just something different.
With 4 arms and 4 legs.
Not an actual Spider-Kid, but that's true. I mean, that's something you've got to consider, is if you have kids, are you going to pass stuff on? I know that's been questions that superheroes have asked in the past. Am I going to, is my biological makeup now different? I think that's...
It's a very serious topic when it comes to X-Men, because X-Men and people with the X gene can't mate with humans because of that very reason. Because they don't know what will come out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, they could fucking, who knows?
Yeah.
Could have some weird, if you're a spider person, you could have 8 legs or whatever. I mean, that's actually sounds kind of handy in a lot of places. You could certainly be a good barista. Seriously.
Only if you know how to control them.
Yeah, but again, I mean, you'd have to have 4 arms and 4 legs, or 6 arms and 4 legs. You don't want all feet. That's not helping anyone unless you happen to be dating Quentin Tarantino. But otherwise,
Jesus.
You want arms. No, it's true. It's fine. Enjoy it. Quentin Tarantino has a foot fetish. God bless him. It's whatever. Enjoy feet, mate. Whatever. Consensual. But yeah, I used to work as a barista for a long time, and I always thought to myself, fuck, it'd be great if I was an octopus. I mean, not an actual octopus, because then I wouldn't know what a barista is because I'm an octopus. I'm just this tiny little echinoderm. No, I would have octopus arms, like multiple arms, so that I could make like 6 coffees at once and serve up and do the thing and blah, blah, blah. So maybe that's the 6th Spider-Man film, is just Spider-Man morphed into a huge monster creature with lots of arms making coffee for people.
But if you think about it, though, if you have just 2 legs and 6 arms, you can't hold your own weight, can you?
This is you're just saying that they would you'd fold in half.
Yeah,
Very true.
I said just to get to the washroom, it take fucking ages because you can't get up. And once you get up, you'll be like, how do I go? Do I go like straight, or do I go diagonal and do a fucking cartwheel or some shit?
Yeah, well, I mean, cartwheel's probably made easier by having more points of articulation and more pressure points on the ground. But yeah, you are talking about if David Cronenberg directed Spider-Man, which, hey, not a bad idea. So, but thank you very much, everyone, for the questions. We do enjoy them. They do produce some ludicrous answers, which I love. And come back next week. Come on back next week when we're going to be talking about the amazing Spider-Man pictures with Tobey Maguire, directed by Mark Webb. Mark Webb.
No, it's Andrew Garfield, man.
Did I say Tobey Maguire again? Fuck my own self. We're going to be talking about Andrew Garfield, AG, the main man himself, the guy who's had a real Garfield-assance, in the last few years. Remarkable films, really interesting shit. We're going to get into it. But until then, Addie, you're beautiful. I love you, and it was so good to be here.
I love you too, man. I love everyone who joined in for this. All the Spider fans, thank you so much for listening and watching. If you're on YouTube,
watching, and as I said, speaking of YouTube, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe. Drop us a comment. Join the conversation. If you're listening on Spotify or Amazon Music, please rate and review the show. It really does help the profile, bring more people into these crazy spider 6-legged barista times that we all love so much.
Yes, and stay home. Do whatever you want.
Stay home. Oh no, hang on, we don't do that anymore. Do whatever you want. That's a good. Yeah, that's a good post-COVID thing to say. Hey, folks, do whatever you want.
Yeah, do whatever you want. Just stay safe. It's a crazy world out there, so just stay amazing. Try to be kind to people. And happy Pride Month once again. Stay amazing. I forgot to say that.
Yeah, particularly on a Spider-Man episode, you've got to be amazing, all right? Come back for some more amazing next week.